GM guys, Shaheen and Sidarides here from Degen Aussie Apes. Today we are super excited to be interviewing StephB.eth. So did I say that right? StephB.eth. Hello.
Or you can just call me Steph.
Yeah, Steph. It's funny with all the .eths and all the different names and things like that. But guys, Steph is here from Airtree. She's the Web3 investment manager. She is a judge for the Web3. Was it the hackathon held by Vision Chain Australia?
Oh yeah, judged a couple of those the hackathons.
You're an investment research manager. You from the medical field. Many tricks, many talents. I think it's super fantastic. So thanks so much for giving us some time today and coming onto the Degen Aussie podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Super cool. John, OG, as always, man. How you going?
Yeah, awesome, man. I guess we're in that weird kind of between December and New Year's where you don't know what day it is, like you're finally getting some time off Twitter. But yeah, I guess, Steph, did you kind of want to walk us through like how your journey in Web3 started? Like what drew you to the space and kind of where are you at now? I think our audience would love to kind of hear that.
I mean, sure. So I kind of came into the space at Airtree. So I am an investment research manager at Airtree and have been for around 7 months now. And I think that when I came into the space, everyone was kind of looking at the resume thinking, hang on, how does this fit? So it's kind of great to be able to have a bit of a chat through it, how I managed to find my way to this role. So my background, as you would see on LinkedIn and all the other places, is very medical research based. So started out in my undergrad in a Bachelor of Science, extended major biomedical science, minor in neuroscience, did my honours in neonatal neuroscience, and then I went over to the UK to do my master's, which I did in clinical neurosciences at the University of Cambridge in conjunction with UCL. And then I came back to the Australian National University, where I'm in my final year of my medical degree for Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery. And so that was kind of, the very traditional path that I was taking academically. But throughout that time, I was kind of always doing other things. I think the best way to describe it would be terminally curious. So back in early 2010s, I was, in Brisbane at uni. I'd kind of done a little bit of corporate consulting and corporate research type stuff. And ever bored, I kind of was checking out Tor, so the deep web, and looking around. And I kept seeing BTC, LTC, and I thought, what's this? And so I had to kind of go in and have a look at it, and that really drew me into the community. A friend of mine at the time was also kind of looking around, seeing what he could find on the deep web. I will say I was not doing anything illegal. But he'd said to me, Steph, you need to buy this. You need to buy Bitcoin. You need to buy Litecoin. This is the future. And I'm very risk averse generally. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to put this money into stock. But loved the idea. And so he put his money into to crypto. I put my money into stock. And I think a few years later, I realized that I'd probably made the wrong decision. And so I put my money back over, at least some of it back over into crypto.
It's quite funny. I did the same sort of thing. I was traditionally stocks and all that type of stuff. And I remember it was 2020 when COVID first started hitting and everything was just crashing. And Luca P, one of our fellow co-hosts, was like, man, we've got to look into stocks. And, we made $1 into $2. And that was exciting. And then he was like, I think we've made a mistake, man. We need to get into crypto. And that's where the journey sort of began. I feel it's a bit of, rite of passage in that way. You start with the stocks, you start wanting to invest and things like that. And then you stumble upon crypto.
Yeah. And so definitely, I think it probably helped to understand the space by starting out in stocks, because I learned how to, read a chart and look at a company and go through that kind of research process that kind of tied into the research I was doing, funnily enough, with my science. And so over that time, kept reading about the space, kept building communities. I really started out in communities on Telegram. And so was just kind of going to official coin telegrams and then would be invited to others. Eventually, a friend of mine kept saying, go to Twitter. And eventually I did, but that was much later. And kind of from there, managed to make really amazing friends, people I'd probably never ever meet otherwise, and help out on their projects. And then that kind of led me into helping out on some coins. And that kind of started as something I just did for fun that I ended up being paid for. And then after that, I had moved into help, like, so this is something we talked about before recording, is decentralized science. And so one of the friends that I'd known, I hadn't kind of told him my name or what I'd done in my real life. And he said, this is what I do. I'm involved in decentralized science. And he had a company, a DAO. And I joined that DAO and started contributing, and at some point said, hang on, this is amazing. So at that point, I had joined that DAO, started contributing there, and started contributing to a few other ones. And some you'd see online, such as Links and AlgoVera, which is a neuroscience DAO, and also then an AI DAO. And that kind of led me into, I'm sure you've heard of Gitcoin's kernel program, where I applied and was a fellow there. And after I was a fellow there, I was thankful that they asked me back to be a mentor. So I'm mentoring the new fellows as they come through. And at the start of this year, I had gone to a Blockchain Australia conference, sat down with Sasal and John Henderson, who is a partner at Airtree, in charge of our crypto fund. And he said, who are you? And I said, I'm a medical student. And we had a coffee, and it's history.
I love how this journey was.
So I think I came about it in a pretty weird way. I came about, through my personal trading and curiosity into, funnily enough, the decentralized science space. Then kind of also helping out on friends' projects, and that really spanning over companies and different kinds of companies and NFT projects. And at some point, I managed to, make it a full-time gig.
I love it. In terms of like the early days when you're working on projects, like what kind of advice or how were you helping out with some of those earlier kind of projects? Like even before the kind of DeSci DAOs, like what were you kind of contributing into those early days?
Yeah, so something I really love is governance and tokenomics. That's something that I think is just so important. So I loved writing up kind of how that might work for people, or having, my friends, as they were conceiving these projects, I'd say, hang on, how about if you try it this way? And the other thing I liked doing was kind of the strategy. And of course, I'd had some community experience in the market. And so I kind of also contributed to how are we going to market this? And it was just such a fun thing for me, coming from like a medical field, which always felt so serious. So it never really felt like work.
It's not really work when it's fun, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, and still.
So you're now at Airtree. Could you explain to all our listeners, what is and who is Airtree?
Of course. Airtree is a venture capital fund based here in Australia. Airtree, it's what we do essentially is we find really cool people with really great ideas that want to start software companies. And we give them the funds and advice that they need in order to grow from a really small company all the way up to a unicorn. So I think you guys know Immutable. That's one of our Web3 investments. But we do actually have about $1.3 billion under management. And in December last year, we raised $50 million purely for blockchain projects. And that's where I come in. I'm the investment research manager for that crypto fund, we like to call it. And so I go around meeting amazing people, talking to people like you guys, meeting people that are trying to build the future of blockchain.
I love it. And for our listeners who might not know what a unicorn is, can you just explain that in simple terms? Because I remember the first time I heard the term and I'm like, oh, that's what it means. Like, what's a unicorn?
Of course, our company that we call a unicorn would be something that has raised, gone to the point where they are worth $1 billion.
That's awesome. And is there another term? Is it megacorn or decacorn? Is decacorn for the $10 billion?
Yeah. Yeah, decacorn maybe for 10 billion. That could be right.
Yeah, okay,
Don't quote me on that.
It's unbelievable. I was going through Airtree's website and just looking at the companies that you have worked with and continue to work with, companies like Canva, Linktree, Crypto Tax Calculator, as you said, Immutables, Abyss Solutions, AI company. It's so impressive. And I think what's even more impressive, it's homegrown, it's Australian. To see how many amazing startups and how many companies there are on the Australian scene. It's one thing in Web3 that's really blown my mind. We talk about it all the time, you know, a few of the guys in the scene, you know, when you said, John, that Dingaling was Australian, we were like, oh, wow, you know, like another Aussie. So it's super cool. In your role, I mean, when you're sort of looking at all these, I mean, companies, Web3, I can see that you guys have dedicated, well, I think it's about $50 million just to some Web3 space at the moment, which is super impressive. What exactly do you sort of look for? What makes these startups and these companies stand out to you as, you know, the manager in charge of all this?
Yeah, great question. I mean, manager in charge of all this, maybe overstating my role just a little bit. What I look for generally, and what we all look for, is amazing people. So if you think about, you know, investment as VC, so we might find you when you're pre-seed, which is, you know, a really early stage company with an idea and product, or maybe even before that point, I might meet you. If you're an amazing person and you have this great idea, we might be chatting to you for years, you know, 10 years down the track, well, you know, however long it may be, we really want to make sure that we are able to do what we're doing right now, having a good, honest conversation and really understanding each other, so that when the tough times hit, you can trust each other on that. And so that's a really big first litmus test for me is, you know, how would I relate to this person? You know, do they seem honest? Do they seem, you know, smart, you know, hardworking? They're all really, really important things. And the next thing is, you know, obviously, why are they doing what they're doing? Because, you know, I might have a really cool idea about, you know, something that I know nothing about. And even though it's a really cool idea, I might not be the best place to really take that to a worldwide company. So I'd really look at them and I'd think, okay, well, what are you really best at in the world? Or what are you really uniquely, you know, positioned to create? And if you have a good answer to, well, not that I would ever ask that, but and if I look at them and that makes sense, and you know, they've had a cool history and they have a reason for why they want to do what they want to do, that's a really good start. After that point, obviously, we come into the more company building, you know, more typical BD stuff. You know, you've got an idea, how big is the market? How do you know, what's your go-to-market? How are you going to, you know, get the customers you need to get? Who is your first customer? What progress have you made so far? And then, you know, talking about the money, how much money do you need? How much do you need to get to the next milestone or to revenue? And how long will it last you, and where will you put it? So some of it really comes down to, you know, the business processes, but I think the magic comes from the people and the founders.
Yeah, I love that. That's, you know, the people. I mean, we say it all the time when we sort of look at NFTs and different metrics, you know, artwork, community. Community is always key. I mean, we've seen communities band together and resurrect so many projects, things like Sushi Swap and all that type of stuff. But one thing I really, really like is the company building side. Because I think there's one thing to mint out a project and there's one thing to get it out there, but a lot of founders may not have the business background, you know, to actually run a business. What do you do when you make all this money? How do you reinvest that for the community, for the business? We've seen fiascos regarding royalties at the moment. It's a super crazy new space. But do you sort of feel, is the space in a sense overcrowded at the moment? Are people's aspirations a bit too high? How are you guys, like, do you sort of funnel all that out and give a bit of a reality check when you're sitting with certain companies? Because I've heard amazing things in Web3. I've heard people, you know, let's get an NFT and buy an island. And it's like, hold on a second. Is that actually logistically possible? So do you feel we're a bit overcrowded and people are shooting for the moon at the moment?
I love the ambition. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. You know, I would never ever try and stifle someone's ambition. I think from the Airtree perspective, where it really comes down to is what's fundable, and that's the word. You know, investable or fundable. For us, it comes to like probably looking at your first idea. You know, what's the audience to it? Are you thinking of something that a lot of people are really going to want to buy? Why would they want to buy it? If they have, a couple of dollars to allocate to different projects, why would they put $1 in yours? And I think that comes down to usability. Is it something that will improve something in their life, or make something easier, or, kind of coming to that point of saying, potentially buying an island isn't the best idea because, it might not be the best investment in terms of some things, but if you buy an island and build things there that are world changing, and it's all done in a way that's new and never seen before, and it's now the smartest island on earth, that's a great idea, isn't it? So it really comes down to execution and planning. And I think probably my role, yes, there are some times where I have to say, unfortunately, this isn't an investment for us. And it comes down to kind of the things we've spoken on. I think what I see in the space at the moment is a lot of people probably aren't as probably very excited about blockchain, excited about crypto, excited about NFTs, and they forget to pair it back to a normal consumer. So the projects I love, the projects that I see and I think this is amazing, are the projects that I can show to my mom and show to my dad and say, look, hey, isn't this cool? And they could say, hey, yeah, I could use that. Or, on another level, if it's a crypto native product, something that everybody's been talking about and saying, oh, this is such a problem. When is this going to be fixed? Or, oh, it's such a pain to do this. Who's going to fix that process? So I think it comes down to just how useful your first idea is, and then your execution. But yes, there are sometimes, unfortunately, that I have to say, it's probably not something that is for us. That being said, though, I always say that there's never a hard no. And at Airtree, we always say that there's never a hard no. Always come back. And if you really believe in your product, keep working on it, and bring it back and say, hey, we've made this progress. I think you were wrong.
I love it. Just on the point of execution, like what have you seen, or if you can give kind of any examples of really solid execution? Because you can have the best idea in the world. If you can't execute it and make it a reality, well, the idea is really not worth anything. You know what I mean? So what have you seen in terms of kind of practical steps of execution that people have taken that has kind of blown you away? Or what kind of advice could you give to someone who's really looking to execute in the space and make that action and get that momentum going?
I mean, firstly, a founding team for me is very important. If you are a technical person, you can build a lot really cheaply, really, really quickly, right? But then you might need someone that's really good in your go-to-market, or your, marketing or business development type stuff, or, a chief of staff. So I think you need to be really honest with yourself as a founder and say, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? And how am I going to build out my founding team to fill those weaknesses? And so I think that's probably the first stage of execution. As soon as you have the idea, you should be thinking on your founding team. Once you have the best people, in the same room, or, it doesn't have to be virtual room, and you're talking about this idea and everyone's contributing, from different sides of that, that's where you get a really good plan. From there, you should hopefully have a relationship where the go-to-market can say, that tech idea you had's amazing, but probably we don't need, all the features. We can just release an MVP and then market that as we're building the rest to get revenue sooner. So these kind of simple things like that help your, firstly, your need to fund, because you may get through things a little quicker. Secondly, they probably help, the process in which you're going about it. It might fix some inefficiencies. And it also means you don't have to be hiring people as you're going through that process. I think, in terms of that execution and go-to-market, it's also like the big thing is being honest with yourself and being kind of having really, really good, record keeping. I think something we've seen this year, particularly with FTX, is that we can have really amazing ideas and they can grow really large. But as they grow, those errors and the things that aren't quite right can grow really large as well. Probably if you're small and you're doing things the best way you can, ethically and operationally from the start, you'll grow into a really lovely, sustainable business. No matter how successful or how far or how quickly you want to grow.
I love it. I guess just as kind of a follow-on question, like this year we've seen the collapse of 3Rs Capital. We've seen venture capital funds like dissolve and kind of disappear, really cut down like the investments that they're making. I think the official stat, and I'd have to check because the year's not over yet, but I think it was 30% this year of the venture capital, funded into Web3 is what we kind of received this year. Like, what do you see that trend picking up again next year? And kind of following on from that, like, do you think there'll be like a kind of, consumer confidence, and when it comes to, people putting out pitches, asking for funding, and obviously VCs delivering that funding? Do you think that will resume in 2023? And if so, like, what kind of niches or trends do you see picking up next year? Is it DeSci? Is it, is it maybe an integration between Web3 and AI? Is it GameFi again? Like, what do you really see? And obviously, this is your personal opinion. What do you see picking up next year in terms of what gets funded?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting statistic on the VC funds, because I know a lot of people, VC funds are still investing in Web3. Definitely, some unfortunate situations and, unacceptable situations in blockchain this year. I think that your first question kind of pointed to, where people are investing and whether we think that will pick up. I actually think it's a really interesting time in the space right now. I think the CEO of Goldman Sachs, I'm forgetting his name, don't get me in trouble for that. He just penned an article saying, like, blockchain is not crypto, I think it was called. And also very recently this month, I believe that I saw an article saying that Goldman Sachs is looking at a lot of the distressed companies to see whether there's, something to invest in there within the space as well. So unfortunately, when we have these horrible, collapses of protocols and the contagion that follows, there are going to be a lot of companies that fail, and they're, sometimes by no fault of the company themselves. It also does give a really interesting time for people to scoop up, companies that are in distress but it's still doing quite well. And it also kind of cuts out a lot of the fat. So what I mean by that is that sometimes in these market downturns, companies that were surviving on potentially the bull market froth, or surviving because of really vibrant communities that were looking for, a community but not necessarily a really good base tech, or, certain situations like that. When it comes to a bear market, people really look at their pocket and they really look at the value of a company and they say, hey, is this really a good investment? And I think we've seen a little bit of a rebalance throughout this year as well as people have done that. So I think it's sometimes a good thing in a really bad way. But moving in, into the positive of 2023, I do think 2023 is going to be a tough year generally. There's no getting away from that. Probably the trends that I think we're going to be seeing, definitely a lot of advertising plays. NFTs is, if we look at the crazy amount of brands that are looking at NFTs as a marketing or a loyalty program or advertising, I think, some of the names are like Adidas, Nike, Dolce & Gabbana, Louis Vuitton, I couldn't count all of them really, Starbucks. I think that will be a really big space to grow. Advertising companies or companies that are, using crypto and NFT technology and blockchain technology to build that space will do quite well. I think privacy, identity, and reputation are really big spaces at the moment. We're kind of at an inflection point, I think, in this market where for a really long time we've hidden personal details from the chain. But with zero knowledge technology and soul-bound tokens and a few other verifiable credentials used in the right way, I think that we'll probably be moving into a space now where we can bring real-world credentials on chain I mean, not the credentials themselves, but proxies. And so by doing that, we can create these amazing systems. And like you said, DSOC, we can create systems that, you know, are able to change our medical system, or able to change, you know, research funding, or kind of going into other spaces. You know, even if we look at, you know, your university degree, having proof of that in a soul bound token. These kind of ideas around privacy, identity, reputation, I think will grow quite a bit this year. Other than that, seeing a lot of social media, community management tools, bringing in Web2 communities with blockchain tooling, which is very cool. I'd say metaverse products will continue to kind of build out. Metaverses themselves, I think, is a really hard thing to build. But if you're, you know, building something that ties into it and is interconnecting into different metaverses, that could be a really good opportunity. 100% AI and blockchain. Check out Algovera. I'm a big fan of that DAO. But, you know, AI and blockchain, I think we've seen with ChatGPT this year that it's an astounding space for technological advancement. And really the uses of it are just unthought of at the moment. And when we combine that with blockchain, there's a lot of really good opportunities. Other than that, security auditing is a big one that came out of this year, unfortunately, but, you know, for the better. Definitely seeing some really awesome protocols coming through, trying to improve safety in the space, so that people can interact in a way that, you know, is a little bit more safe. And other than that, I'd just say lots of wallet solutions. I think I've seen a little bit coming through in 2022, but I'm really looking forward to really cool, customizable wallet solutions in 23.
It's like they say, not your keys, not your coins. And I think a lot of people have learned that the hard way. You've got a really cool Substack that I was having a look at. So for everyone out there, we're going to put all the links. We'll put links for Airtree. Check the website. Check this Substack out. Your last article that you were writing, which was regarding hacked healthcare and blockchain. And in it, you were discussing the recent hacks on Medibank, Optus, the ATO. And just to put in perspective for all our listeners, and because you put these stats in there that, you know, just when you sort of read them, it blows your mind. Like Medibank had up to 3.9 million people affected. Optus had up to 11.2 million people affected. The ATO had up to 80,000 people affected. In your opinion, I mean, and I'd really like to know from your medical research background and everything you do on the medical side, how will this blockchain technology be helping us in the medical field? You know, we get scared. I mean, I remember when it first came out, it wasn't too long ago that we all had to opt out of our health details being posted, and it was, you know, quite a lot of fear around that. How do you think this technology is going to benefit the medical side here?
Yeah, great question. I mean, not speaking ill of any of these companies, because I'm definitely sure that they're spending a lot of money and a lot of time trying to do everything that they can to combat a massively growing problem. You know, I don't necessarily, I'm not saying that they've done the wrong thing in any way, including, you know, all of them, my health record. And I definitely think that's been done, you know, as well as possible. I think probably where I come to it is I have like I love the idea of data autonomy. I love the idea of data privacy. What I don't really love the idea of is the really big tech companies, you know, the Facebook, Googles, that have so much of our data. And, you know, this kind of does tie into the medical field, because, you know, the systems that we're using for medical data and medical research, again, they're very good systems. But potentially, if we were to change it up a little bit and say, hey, instead of you holding all of the data and creating a treasure chest for people to hack and get all of the data at once, maybe, you know, if we distribute through distributed systems and wallets, that my medical data will be held by me. And the great thing about blockchain, of course, is that it's traceable. So I can see who's accessing. I can see, you know, who's requesting access. I can see who's adding. And I'm not saying that we're anywhere near this happening at the moment. And of course, I'm not a computer scientist or a cybersecurity expert, but 100% believe that the future comes from a more customizable solution rather than creating modern day treasure chests in like, you know, siloed data. But there is something to be said of siloed data as well, because, you know, if we have a building with one door, it could have a lot of great things. And if we guard that door really well, there's you know, not a lot of problem. But the problem comes when we have external systems, such as, you know, the Facebooks and Twitters and wherever else, that are holding that data and maybe not using it as ethically as we would like, or using it for purposes that we aren't really super keen on or aware of. So I think in terms of medical data, really what it comes down to is data autonomy. Our medical systems are quite rigid, and by design a little bit, but it's really quite hard to get access to your medical data, or to see, you know, the culmination of doctors' data that you've accumulated over maybe an 80-year life. And that's why my health record was something that was brought in, because if a little old lady comes in off the street to a hospital and we don't know anything about her medical history, we'll know a little bit better how to treat her. And so the wonderful thing about these systems would be that you get to potentially create a system like that with a little bit more trust, because you have a little bit more control over it.
Yeah, I think we lost a lot of control at times through the Facebooks, just by a lack of understanding as to how much our data was out there. And, you know, my entry into crypto was meme coins, but it wasn't until I started researching about the actual technology that it was things like this that gave me a firm belief in this is life-changing technology and great solutions to stop these sort of problems, you know, whether it's identity fraud or anything like that. I think it's great, and I can't wait to see what the medical side and blockchain can actually produce, because I don't think people really understand how life-changing this potentially is.
Yeah, and 100% there are ways of doing different things. And by all means, you can achieve a lot of different things that I'm saying that aren't necessarily on blockchain, but I really think that it's an emerging technology that is really just starting. And obviously with Airtree investing $50 million here, we believe that as well.
Something a little bit off topic from the medical side. You were recently hosted, I believe, at Parliament House by the Tech Council of Australia for the launch of their digital assets in Australia. After being involved in all of that, what's your thoughts on like sort of where we currently stand and what may come next for regulating our space in Australia?
2023 is going to be a big year for regulation everywhere, I think. I don't think that you can go through the FTX, Celsius, 3AC, Terra Luna, and not have some fallout. Unfortunately, but also maybe for the better in some ways. So I went to the launch of the Digital Assets in Australia report with the Tech Council of Australia. And since then, I've actually been working in their working group, contributing to the digital assets advice towards Parliament. So I think early 2023, Treasury will be releasing a consultation doc on their token mapping experiment, which is very exciting. August 2022, this year, the Federal Reserve, the Reserve Bank of Australia, you might need to cut that out and make sure that I've said the right thing. Let me just double check. Sorry, just a second.
That's all good.
The pilot program.
Oh, I think we've lost John anyways.
You might need to cut that out because I probably should work out what it is. Reserve Bank, yeah. Yeah. So in August this year, we had the Reserve Bank of Australia start their pilot program looking and researching into the idea of an Australian central bank digital currency, or CBDC. That I believe will be finishing sometime in 2023, which will be very, very interesting to read. I know that that's a pretty emotive topic for a few people, but it's something that a lot of companies all over the world are really looking into at the moment. Other than that, I think I'll be keeping an eye on Biden administration, seeing what they're doing with after their executive order, looking at digital assets. That will be pretty interesting because I think we've seen a lot of countries seem to follow the US's lead on a lot of these things. From the Australian perspective, though, if I may, I think that we really are positioned in a very good spot. You know, we have amazing talent, blockchain talent. We have a really a smaller, more flexible, you know, environment here where we're able to maybe create change through our systems a little bit easier than the US systems, and place ourselves with, you know, really good grants and really good positive laws to create a safe ecosystem that isn't stifling growth. So that's my hope for this year. I think hopefully at the end of 2023, we have some governance that is positive, and you know, people that are really putting the efforts in, and lawmakers that are really putting the effort into understanding what they're trying to regulate, which is such a hard thing because it's changing every day. But I'm really positive that will be a positive regulatory environment in Australia, and hopefully, you know, these events of this year won't have impacted that too harshly.
Yeah, I think who knows, maybe CBDCs might push a bit of mass adoption. I mean, I think in the end of the day, we have to see a level of regulation in the space, because 99.9% of the people are just being burnt, and you know, that just taints a negative sentiment across the board. And you know, we have to have someone step in and say, okay, enough's enough. Whether good, whether bad, let's wait and see. We are decentralized for a reason, but sometimes we do need a bit of rules around how we sort of play this environment. But on the NFT side, and we're going to...
I will just say to that point, I think a lot of the things that we're seeing in the space aren't necessarily due to the space. A lot of the crime and scamming that we're seeing are like copycats of exactly what's happening in spaces that have nothing to do with blockchain. And you know, yes, there are some things to be learned, and some regulation to be put in place, but I think if we over-regulate the DeFi and over-regulate the tech, that can sometimes be a dangerous thing as well.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's been a tough road, especially on the degen side, after, you know, one project drops and you see all, you know, copycats dropping and things like that. It's it's a crazy space, but I think anything sort of new like this, you know, can be crazy. I just seen, you know, and you've probably both seen it yourselves, a lot of people get sort of that gold fever with certain things and stuff like that. But your PFP, which I thought was really cool, Wasi by Wasis, can you tell us a bit about it? Because I mean, I recognized it straight away. Super unique. I love the Wasis. We've got our own Wasi, as we said before, off air. Could you tell us a bit about the community and the NFT itself?
Sure. I mean,
with the medical equipment, the stethoscope and stuff.
Perfect.
I love it so much. I was very lucky with this one. A friend of mine, he, you know, very involved in the project, and so they managed to make me a custom StephB.eth that has my little stethoscope on the ground, and you know, my little pink dress, which was very cute of them. I love this community, and I'm not. This is not a shill. This is not a go buy this. This is definitely just from my perspective, no financial advice. But yeah, no, they're a pretty good community. Wasi's kind of started out. I'm sure you've seen if you're on crypto Twitter. There's a few places that, you know, the law had started, but everyone would maybe be aware of Inversbra or Smolting, which is quite a large crypto Twitter account that essentially finds cringe and reposts it. And so I think that kind of is maybe where it started. Essentially, it's a little creature that lives for 2 weeks, and maybe you can read into the law yourself, but I do love the project. They're building out AI, kind of augmented reality tools for it, metaverse tools. So hopefully, maybe the next time I do this, I'll be my Wasi. You won't be seeing my face.
I love it. I think it's so cool for everyone out there. I mean, the collection was 12,345 Wasis, which 9,000 minted out, 3,000 held for the community. Super cool stuff, because we just see so much copycat in NFTs at times, whether it's breeding, whether, oh, here's a serum drop. But I just thought it was really cool that it, you know, passed away horrifically or stupidly over 14 days, and then you got a generic one back, or genetic one back, that's always tied back to the other Wasi. Look, super cool. For everyone listening, do your own research. I mean, we're going to put all the links for Airtree, I'm super bullish to see where you guys are heading this year, because I love where you guys are coming from with Airtree. But one thing that really stood out, besides the impressive partners and customers you guys are working with, was just the fact that you guys have such a strong moral compass, and you don't do anything and invest in tobacco, drugs, alcohol, porn, gambling, or weapons. It's just not for you guys. And kudos to you guys. I think that's, I love that. That's really cool. But we will have all the links on there. Steph, before we wrap it up, we usually love to ask about mental health. Especially at the moment in this market where people have been burned by Luna, they've been burned by FTX. There's been a few hard pills to swallow this year. So do you have any advice around mental health and what we could sort of implement into our lives just to make this road a bit easier?
That's such a great question, and it's such an important thing to talk about, I think, in this space, especially people that are involved in trading themselves, like, coins or NFTs. I think my philosophy personally is to really just try and be as kind and as try and spread as much kind of smile and joy as you can. It's really easy in our space to be mean because a lot of us are anonymous. And so, you can have your anonymous identities and you can spread, the bad, or you can spread the good. And I think that it's an amazing opportunity to spread good. My experiences in this space have been, very, very, very widely positive. And even when it comes to mental health, I think that we've all seen situations where people have been vulnerable enough to say that, they're not doing so well. And the rallied support around them is pretty amazing. So I'd say look after your communities, look after yourself. At the end of the day, if you're an investor in this space, it's an investment. It's not your identity. It's not your life. If you have to sell that, whatever it is, that shouldn't mean that your community leaves you. That's something I see a lot in the NFT space, and that I just don't really agree with. It's an investment. You can sell it, you can buy it, but at the end of the day, hopefully your communities will be a little transcendent past that one thing you hold. We have identities created around your PFP, but if you one day had to put your face on there, I hope your friends would stick around. And so I'd say be that friend.
Yeah, I love it. Kindness, love, it's so important, especially in this space. Like you said, a lot of people are not docs, they're anonymous, and it can get a bit rough out there. Well, guys, this is Steph from Airtree, and I really thank you so much for coming on. And I'd also just like to thank, from all of us, the DG Aussie Apes and everyone in the medical field over the last couple of years, of what you guys have all done for us. You guys were on the front line fighting this horrible disease. So thank you so much for putting yourselves on the line. And I'm really excited personally to see your journey over 2023. And for everyone out there, please make sure you like, follow, subscribe. We will be putting Steph's details all in the bio. So yeah, make sure you subscribe. And thank you so much for coming on, Steph.
Thank you so much, guys. It's actually been so fun to have a little bit of a chat. And I hope you have a really good rest of your holiday.
You've always got a home at the DG Aussie Apes. We'd love to see you in Sydney soon.
I've got to come and visit.
100%. Well, guys, like I said, DG Aussie Apes, Siderides, like, follow, subscribe. You know what you need to do.